Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to review films, either current or classic. This week we are going with a film from the current category. We'll be reviewing Knives Out, the new whodunit from director Rian Johnson. We're also going to be catching up with some movie news, which we haven't had an opportunity to do for a hot minute. So looking forward to that. Before we jump into all of that goodness, though, let me heap some additional goodness on top by introducing you to those co-hosts and wonderful, wonderful people I mentioned earlier. Jim Pugliafico is with us on the show. Hey, babe, how are you?
Hello. I'm glad to be here. Welcome to the podcast, everybody.
We are glad to have you here as well, babe. And Will Lindis is here too. Welcome, Will. How the hell are you doing?
Howdy, Brad. Howdy, Jim. I think a podcast is afoot.
Oh, no.
It is.
That accent is already plaguing everything. Oh, no.
Plaguing everything.
Plaguing? Or no, we'll get to
it. Oh, goodness. Hey, a big hello to everyone who's joining us in the live chat as well. Looks like we've got several folks who've already hopped on. Welcome. Glad to have you with us. Hamstrack says howdy in the chat. Hey, Hamstrack. Good to have you with us as well. Welcome. Jim and Will, it's been a little while since we've gotten to do some movie news. Are you excited to catch up on a few things?
I very much am, especially because, spoilers, we sort of like share what our news items are going to be beforehand. We don't come into this completely blind. And I think there's some weeks where the movie news stuff is very like loaded with negativity, or just like there's some sort of like Twitter shitstorm that's happening, or there's something in the news that is just uncomfortable. And I'm really excited about our news items because they're not that. They're just interesting things that are happening right now. And I'm so excited to dive into them with you.
There's always a Twitter shitstorm going on, right? But I mean, if you especially in the film Twitter world, there's just so much going on all the time.
I'm about to mute the word Scorsese and Marvel on my Twitter because if there was a way that I could tweet or block those two words in the same tweet, because I mean, honestly, film Twitter has been insufferable for the last few weeks. Like everyone has a hot take and none of them are good.
Yeah. It's like we're turning into a society of hot takes.
And everybody thinks their hot take is like the be all end all, and it's fucking annoying.
Yeah.
Hey guys, no one's ever thought of this before, and it's the same thing verbatim that 5 people said like in the 2 minutes earlier.
Yeah.
The worst is when the hot take is not really a good take as much as it's just like someone finds like a witty play on words that someone else already made, but they're passing off as their own joke. There's a lot of that's happening right now on Twitter, and it sucks. So I'm glad that's not our movie news.
My favorite thing is like the crazy generalizations. Like anybody who liked this movie is obviously foolish and doesn't know anything about film.
I just see people tearing down other people's takes all the time. You know what I mean? Like it's like everything that's thrown into the ring is like gas on the fire almost. You know what I mean? There's just never much. I don't know. It just seems like the common ground is gone. You know what I mean? In most discussions.
Yeah, and it's almost like,
except if it's Baby Yoda.
Well, it's not like the discussion needs to have consensus or agreement for it to be an effective conversation. I think 2 people can walk away, or multiple people on opposite sides of an issue can have very strongly differing views on the state of cinema, whether or not this thing is good or bad, whether or not this performance is effective or not. I think you can be on a lot of different sides of things because we're all human beings with our own subjective opinions on things. And we can disagree politely and respectfully. And I think the internet, and I think specifically like the 280 character limit, really makes that so much more difficult because you have to get your point across as quickly, as quippily, and as bluntly as possible to fit that character limit.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, it's one thing to just share your opinion. It's another thing to try and, I don't know, proselytize or convince everyone else to have the same opinion as you. And that's where I think we get into trouble a little bit. So on our show, we like to talk about movies and share how we feel about them. I hope we don't come across as trying to, tell people what to think or make them think something that they don't. But I'm not a listener. I'm a co-host. So maybe I'm not tuned into that. I don't know.
And it's easy too, because at the end of the day, these are things that on Twitter, if you're part of film Twitter, it's because you're either in the industry or you're someone who's passionate enough to follow people that are. And so I get it. It's something that it's not just a passing fancy for you. It's something that you're invested in. And when we have those types of things, our emotions tend to run hot. But I do think that there is so much to be gained from just taking a step back, and worst case scenario, like speaking in less in absolutes and more in like, I felt this about this. I disagree with that point because I felt this way instead, or I saw it this way. Totally valid, but God, stop with the fire takes, people. We worked a rant in, and I'm good with that. I really liked our group rant. Like this is good. This is good. This, it gets a little spicy.
We're ranting about ranting.
It was totally organic, non-GMO, cage-free, range-free. So yeah. It works out. Steve Sosa. Hey, Steve. Welcome. Good to see you. He says,
he's back.
As long as there's no lady yelling at a stupid cat, then I'm okay with it. Yeah, that meme has kind of taken over the internet for the last couple weeks. But now I think we're swinging to Baby Yoda memes instead, Steve. So you may be okay. Just hang in there, bud. Hang in there.
Baby Yoda was so last week, whereas the stupid cat was last month. You know what I mean?
I had just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to some friends. They were all over, and I was just like, "Oh, this is like the woman with the cat." And my friend was like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Oh, the meme. I haven't seen it." And then we were all just like,
"How did that happen?
How have you not?" And I pulled it up like, "Surely you've seen this." He's like, "No, I really haven't." And I'm like, what graceful, blissful part of the internet do you frequent to have avoided this? Because I want to live there. I'm right there with you, Steve. I am so over the lady pointing at the cat.
What you need to do is take an angry lady pointing at the cat meme and make a meme about the angry lady pointing at the cat using that meme. It'd be very Inception-y.
And the sad thing is, I've seen that one. It's sort of like Ouroboros, like the snake starts to eat its own tail with these memes, right? Like you get the first level of the memes, and you get the second level where it's like, now we have to dissect everything in pop culture, and then the meme has to become a meme about the fact that it's a meme. And the worst part is every single one of them is like that. So Baby Yoda is, to me at least, getting close to woman yelling at the cat. Nothing against Baby Yoda, but just it's starting to get into beating the dead horse territory for my internet consumption as well, and that's not fun.
I've never blocked. I might have unfollowed maybe one or two or three people in my entire life, but I've never blocked anybody or like filtered things out of my feed. I haven't felt the need to do that. But like in the last couple of weeks, I swear I have one person on my Facebook feed who is he must have sent out or reposted every single one of those cat memes that he found funny. Like I swear like 20 or 30 of them at least.
Everyone is a meme girl, Jim. It happens.
A meme girl.
Oh boy. All right. Well, we got a lot to talk about on the show this week, and I know we're anxious, as Will was mentioning earlier, to jump in to some movie news before we get to our movie review discussion for this week, which of course will be Knives Out. Jim and Will, are you ready to make that jump?
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's do this.
All right. It's been a little while, but here we go. Some movie news. Do. All right.
Have to go find that. have to go find that
I
thing.
know it lives somewhere on your computer in the editing files somewhere,
It
Jim.
still does. It still does. Yes, it does.
Oh boy! All right, Jim, why don't you get things started for us? What's on your film related radar this week?
Well, speaking of hot takes and memes, I think this topic maybe has generated more hot takes in the last few months than almost anything, even Baby Yoda at this point. Um, that's the movie Cats. You guys have heard that there's a new
Meow.
live action movie of the musical Cats coming out, right? Have you heard about this?
I may or may not have retooled my Twitter account into a Cats fan page. Yeah,
I
I'm,
mean,
I'm
it's
slightly
probably
familiar.
my most anticipated film for the rest of the year, right? Regardless of the reason, you gotta say that it's high on your anticipated film list. At least it is for me.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
memories.
So yeah, right. So people have been talking about this, and apparently the director Tom Hooper has been hearing some of the kind of the buzz that's been going on about this film. A lot of the reactions that people had when the first trailer was released, because I think we had a teaser and then we had a trailer. And recently, I think we got another trailer,
Mm.
right? I think we got a new trailer pretty recently. So basically, he came out and said basically he was just fascinated with the response, even though it was very controversial and negative, because he found it quite entertaining. He said for a while, he said he noticed it was like the number one trending topic in the world. And he also said that, he wasn't worried about it. He said he knew when the first trailer came out that, some of the character designs weren't really fully fleshed out. Some of the effects of the combination of celebrity and cat weren't quite um, smoothed out, and there were some things going on there that may have looked weird. And they said that like in the 5 months or 4 or 5 months that I guess they had time to
Oh.
retool some of the effects and the look of the characters in the movie, which seemed to be the kind of the fuel for most of the buzz that came out, the negative discussion and the hot takes. Um, I don't know. For me, and we'll get to what you guys think, but for me, when it first came out, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. There's people like that look like they're dressed as cats, and it's kind of weird. But once you get into it, that these are cat characters, it doesn't look all that much different than what it looked like if you've ever seen like video clips of the stage production. It didn't look that much different to me. Um, and neither did I see a big difference from what was released 4 months ago to the latest trailer that was released. Although it looked a little different, and also it seemed to be there was less lash out from the community about the latest one. Um, Maybe because everybody got their hot takes out all 4 months ago, and they're out of ammunition by now. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think of number one? I mean, what do you think about the movie quickly, and then what do you think about this? How this has kind of morphed into kind of its own thing.
I mean, for me,
well, I think. Oh, go for it.
I mean, am I excited about the movie? I don't know if I'm excited or not. I'm not the biggest fan of the musical to begin with, but I will say when I saw that first teaser, and I think we may have talked about this on the show at one point, the CGI was not great especially in terms of like, there's one point where like Jennifer Hudson is like talking and then she's singing, and like the like her face moves, but the head of the cat body stays put. And so it's like really uncanny valley. It looked really weird.
Mm.
So if that was like early footage, that was early effects. I know sometimes marketing wants to get something out there, and not everything's finalized when they put that out. I'm kind of glad to hear that maybe there's been some retooling and redesigning a little bit. It doesn't sound like it's on the same level as like Sonic being completely redesigned after the fan backlash. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with making sure that your musical CGI cats look as easy on the eyes as possible. So I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, and a little bit of it is there's a bit of a magic trick to what the director did here, because the normal process for cutting a trailer, sort of like the inside baseball part of it, is you do the special effects for the trailer first, and before you finish, you do anything else. So at the time that that first trailer came out, if it's like any other movie in the existence of movies, which it is, you know, it's part of the machine, right? Um, the effects that were closest to done were the ones that were in the trailer, and all of the rest of the movie was probably still janky and weird looking. Jankier and weirder looking. And so this is why, Brad, you exactly hit the nail on the head. You know, that's why they were able to do what they did with Sonic, and do that whole redesign. One of the things I was reading up on that was that they didn't have to redo the entire movie like a lot of people thought. They had only finished the Sonic for the trailer, and so they had to fix that stuff and do some character design stuff, and it did affect timeline. But they didn't have to go back and redo the entire movie, because the animation for the rest of the movie hadn't been done yet. So I think what he was able to do is sort of do a little PR trick here by saying, oh, we had some time to listen to some feedback and do a little bit of work on the special effects. And hey, anyone that was dunking on this before, you may want to go check this out now because it's way better than you expect. Well, that's the process of making movies anyway. And so I think that he was able to just sort of like lean into that to get the sort of the PR boost. Now, as for me, I'm excited to see the movie. I'm right there with you, Brad, on another thing that you said. I think that there was this weird facial drift thing that was happening with Jennifer Hudson. And even more so, I think that no matter how good the special effects look, one of the things that differentiates this movie from the stage play is that the stage play was people literally in costumes, and it looked like they were in costumes. It looked like they were wearing clothes. Whereas here they are CGI cat people, and that uncanny valley difference is always going to be, if the design doesn't look good, it doesn't matter how good the effects are, the design is always going to be off-putting. And I think that's the thing they're going to run up against. I don't think any amount of, like, you could rerun the effects on this for the next 2 years, but James Corden and Idris Elba and all of them are still going to look fucking bizarre
as cats.
And presented in cats in this particular way.
I think you're right. Well, no matter how much you retool and work on it, they're never going to get it perfect.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Sometimes you just can't lick those insurmountable odds that are against you.
Yeah, man, let's not get into the puns.
I don't know. I'm feline fine about it.
All right, let's nip this in the bud before it gets to it.
Is a bud a reference to a cat's butthole, Will? Is that what you're alluding to?
It wasn't. I was going for more the catnip, but hey, we can do that too.
Well, you've got a good point. The actors in like the stage play, obviously they're wearing like a suit, right? Like a costume with maybe with fur on it. I don't know. I'd have to go back and research it. But when I look at like pictures of the current ones of the actors in their whatever, it almost looks like a better fitting, like a more form-fitting suit with fur on it. It just looks like a better fitting thing. It doesn't look like vastly different. And I guess, and also kind of what you said, I don't care how you slice it, how good the video effects are. It's a cat-human hybrid, right? So it's going to be weird. I mean, it just is, and I don't think special effects are going to be able to overcome that, maybe that little bit of a dissonance in people's heads, because you have human faces on cat-like bodies. So, I don't think you're going to be able to kind of get past that until you get into the movie and your brain kind of maybe settles into, okay, these are these characters, whether you see them as cats, humans, or half cat, half human. I think at some point, hopefully, the movie will allow you to get past that and be able to, to maybe enjoy the movie if it's any good.
Bare minimum, at least what we're going to get is a weird movie. And I think that that's a net positive because we are in the middle of Oscar prestige season. And there's a certain type of film that historically gets released here. Even the musicals that kind of go into Oscar category tend to be a little more austere. And so I appreciate that we have a film here that looks like it's a huge swing that might and probably will whiff, but is still sort of in that prestige category, but is weird as fuck. It reminds me of why I liked Shape of Water so much, because it was unlike anything else that came out around that time. And for what it's worth, Cats is unlike anything else I will probably see this year, for good or for bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just, like I said, I've never seen or read much about the original, the story behind the original, behind the Cats, stage play or whatever. All I know is about this group of cats, and they talk about this place where one of them's going. Like, I assume I assume it's a big parable for dying. I assume that's kind of what it's about, and the afterlife, maybe. Hopefully, it's something like that. But don't spoil me.
I don't want to spoil you. Yeah.
Okay.
Just go into it blind, because if I told you what it was about, one, you wouldn't believe me, and it would ruin the the experience.
Okay. All right. Great.
So Hamstracked, this will be our final thought. Hamstracked in the chat says, point of comparison to Cats, the Thundercats as cat-human hybrids didn't look weird. So,
of course they did. They were weird as fuck.
Well, what we didn't have in Thundercats,
muscly cats with faces.
We didn't have James Corden cat going meow. So we didn't have that Thundercat.
No,
Thank
right.
God.
I just want to see James Corden hold up the Sword of Omens and call for sight beyond sight, and my life will be complete. Can that be a thing? That'd be awesome.
Maybe thing.
All right. Well, when Cats finally comes out, Jim, I know you're really looking forward to seeing that. We'll see how things play out. But
okay.
Will, what have you got this week?
Yeah, so the item that I'm bringing to the table for movie news is something that hit really recently. And by that, I mean 2 a.m. at my time recently, because in the middle of the night at midnight Pacific time, 2 Central, et cetera, Marvel just sort of dropped the new trailer for the teaser trailer for the Black Widow movie that is set to come out in May of 2020. Normally these things show up at like a Comic-Con or like get a little more fanfare, and this one just sort of stealth dropped out. And so far, at least as far as what I've been seeing, and I guess my take as well, it looks like reactions are pretty positive. I'm seeing a lot of just from anecdotally people saying I don't know if I was really on board with it, but after watching this trailer, I'm here for it. The film is about Black Widow, the Natasha Romanoff character played by Scarlett Johansson from, the Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame, and all those different movies. Well, that's a different
Jojo
Avengers
Rabbit.
property. That's a different property. The Black Widow character is just from Avengers, although. Yeah, hell of a year for ScarJo. But it's got other characters like Florence Pugh from Midsummer, and Rachel Weisz, and David fucking Harbour. It shows up in the trailer and all of his bearded Russian daddy goodness. I like this trailer. It looks fairly at least from what we've seen, it's more just showing all the characters getting together. I don't know that we have a really good vibe on what it's going to be about or even where it fits into the storyline, but I like all of those actors. I like the characters that we've seen so far, and kind of the spy funness looks interesting. So I'm on board for Black Widow.
I just have 2 questions. One, did David Harbour bulk up and get a bunch of muscles for this movie, or are those CGI muscles? Because he's not that muscular in Stranger Things Season 3.
Right.
So I'm curious about that.
And
it's a cat suit that they took the fur off of. Most of the fur.
There we go. It's his Thundercat suit.
Maybe they just moved his head to a different body. And then my second question is, and Will, as our comic book expert, maybe you know more about this. Is this taking place before the events of the last Avengers movie? Or the last 2 Avengers movies?
So anything that I know about comic books goes out the window in context of where this one fits and what it does. They've sort of said that this is before what happens with like the Avengers in game and all of that stuff, but it's not a prequel, but it's also not going to be a straight up spy thriller. They're going through a lot of saying what, like, a lot of these things in like these little like interviews and snippets have been like what this film is not, and they're purposefully not saying what it is. So what that means is I think that we're going to know kind of where this fits into the grand scheme of things when we sit down and watch it, unless they fuck up the trailer process and give us something terrible in February.
Spoilers for Endgame. Black Widow dies. Like, she's gone. Boof.
Yeah.
You know? So maybe this is going to bring her back to life? I don't know.
The only thing that like kind of maybe gives credence to the idea that this might be set sometime in the past, although not too far in the past, because it looks like she's, you know, kind of already free of that life, is her backstory is about like being trained as a Russian assassin and just all the stuff that happens there. And it very much looks like it's leaning into, you know, the Red Guardian, which is the David Harbour character, being like sort of like Russia's version of Captain America, kind of. You've got Yelena, the Florence Pugh character, who has a Russian accent and kind of comes from that same background. So it's very possible that this is either a kind of like set in the past and it's just sort of telling a story about her in between missions and stuff, which feels kind of weak for that to come out now. Or two, it's after the fact, and this is like sort of a weird getting the band back together after some sort of crazy post end game shenanigans happens.
What did they call it? The 5-year. What did they call it it was a skip or something? What did they call it in? I forget what they called it.
Yeah, the 5-year jump thing. Yeah,
the jump. Yeah. I've seen some articles calling this an origin story, so I suspect it's before all that. If they're right, and who knows, you can't believe everything you read on the internet. But I watched the trailer, and I mean, it looked fine. I definitely will see it. I want to see what Scarlett Johansson does. Hopefully, Marvel won't do with ScarJo what they did with Brie Larson. Kind of like bring her down to, I don't know. They kind of muted her a little bit, I think, in the Captain Marvel movie. But I hope she gets more, because she really didn't get a lot in the Avengers movies, right?
She got to
Black Widow wasn't really.
She got to pick up Cap's shield whenever he dropped it.
Yeah, but I mean,
that was a joke.
She definitely didn't get as much face time as some of the others, right? So
she is the only one. I mean, I guess Hawkeye without a solo film of the kind of the core characters, and I would say they gave her more and more to do as it went along, but she definitely got the short end of the stick. And I think that, you know, James says here in chat, you know, for this movie, for me, this movie feels 10 years too late, but I'll give it a sympathetic chance, and she did give her life for us. And I think that first part of that, like, it feels 10 years too late. It really does feel like this movie could have easily been slotted in sometime like sort of between Winter Soldier and Civil War, kind of that stage of the MCU, just sort of like a look back at Black Widow's backstory. That may have made the stuff that happens in Endgame maybe even more impactful if we had seen more of where she came from. But here, you know, it is what it is.
Marvel loves their fat shaming jokes, though, don't they? I mean, we got a lot of it in Endgame, and we even got 2 fat jokes in this trailer. So it was kind of interesting. We got what's his name, muscly guy from Stranger Things,
David Harbour,
saying something about how the suit fits, and then we got some other woman, and I don't know the character's name, so forgive me, calling him just plain out calling him.
You
fat.
got fat.
So and we all laugh.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's when is that going to become problematic? Well, I have no idea. But not in the Marvel universe.
Here's one thing I find interesting. There's no like fat shaming toward women. in these movies. It's always fat shaming toward men. Have you noticed that?
Maybe that makes it easier to swallow. They think it makes it easier to swallow. I don't know.
I think there's a few things like, I mean, obviously things like ageism and fat shaming and stuff like that are still on the kind of the peripheral of what is taboo, and I think they're becoming more and more part of the conversation than they were before. But you know, there have been other things that we've had to also talk about first, and so we're just getting there. I will say, at least compared to, you know, we've only seen kind of the jokes in the trailer, so I don't know the rest of the context. At least with Avengers Endgame, I think that while there were some jokes there, also the character ends up sort of embracing that body type, which I think is sort of an important part of things, you know, and that's a whole separate discussion. But at least it, like, he didn't magically turn away from that; he magically turned into it. So I'll be interested in seeing how much of a punchline the David Harbour character is, or if it's going to be more of, like, you know, just one little aspect to kind of be quick in the trailer. Yeah.
I suspect it'll be quick. But then again, I don't know how much his character plays into the story at all. It could be just a very quick couple of scenes for all I know. I'm especially when you get this deep into the Marvel lore and comic book canon and stuff. I just don't know anything about that character or how much he plays a part in Black Widow after she emerges from, you know, this group that she's in.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll have to see what happens. Hamstracked in the chat says, doesn't look like a strong start to Phase 4. I think I chose a good time to jump ship on the MCU. And
I mean,
oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, to each their own on you know, where they. I don't know if it's you know, even a non-MCU guy like me, I don't know if I'd consider jumping ship yet. There could still be some great things to come out of the MCU. Whether this is one or not will remain to see. Brad, I'm sorry I talked over you, but go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I was just going to say I've seen a lot of similar comments today on Facebook and Reddit and Twitter. You know, and I don't know. At least from this trailer, it doesn't have me super excited about this movie. Part of that could be I'm feeling some superhero fatigue on the Marvel end of things after the last Avengers and Spider-Man movie. I don't know. But yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see how things play out when this movie comes out. And obviously this is launching the whole next phase of Marvel movies. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens. But
yep, it's coming.
Indeed.
When does that is it next summer?
It's May. I think I'm seeing a tentative May 1st, but, you know, May.
There we go.
Indeed,
their schedule.
It'll be our post South by Southwest, like 2 weeks after review. So
return to the mainstream.
There we go.
Yeah, it'll be like I wouldn't even say it's going to be our first summer blockbuster, because that's at this point like summer blockbusters start in March, so that'll already been a few out by then.
They start Valentine's Day this year, earlier and earlier every year, just like Christmas.
Oh shit! You're probably right. Like in fact, I bet you if I look up, this weekend the next summer blockbuster is coming out.
Oh boy! Well, we got a movie to discuss as well, and I'm just going to be very brief with my my movie news. It kind of feels like a plug a little bit, but for fans of Studio Ghibli movies who have been wanting these films on a streaming platform for years, there has been nothing but a wall of frustration because there hasn't been a distribution deal in place. You couldn't get these movies streaming anywhere. You had to buy physical copies of the films, or, you know, some people would pirate them. You could go see them sometimes if movie theaters were doing like a special showing. And there was a lot of talk of some of these films coming to HBO Max or whatever this spring at some point. But there were lots of question marks up in the air. And there was an announcement that just came out a couple days ago. You guys can't see me, but I'm clapping and rubbing my hands in delight. Distribution deal has been struck. Things are moving very quickly. The Studio Ghibli library is going to be available on all major streaming platforms. So Apple, Amazon, Vudu, Sony, etc. Get this, on 12/17. Just 14 days away, 2 weeks. We are going to have access to all of our favorite Studio Ghibli films. They're each going to be $19.99. I didn't see anything about like a box set of all of those films, though I imagine something, must be coming on that level. But whether you are a stalwart fan of Studio Ghibli and that incredible library of work, or you've never really seen them before and you've always been curious about them, now is your opportunity. Well, I guess 2 weeks from now, relative to when we're recording, is a great opportunity for you to go in. Yeah, you got to buy the movies. I didn't see anything about like rental agreements. I don't know if that's happening, but I mean, $20 a movie. Just ask your friends, what's your favorite Studio Ghibli movie? And then buy all the ones they talk about, which will probably be every single one of them. So I'm pumped. Yeah. I can't wait. I'm going to start at the beginning. Jim, I know you've seen a few of these films. I don't know if you're maybe on board for a Studio Ghibli trip down memory lane with me, but I'm pretty pumped.
Yeah, there's some I really love, and I'm definitely be with you along on that journey. And there's some classics that I've actually never seen, like My Neighbor Totoro. I just haven't seen it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That'll be fun.
Yeah, but the tale of, was it Princess Kaguya? Was that it?
Kaguya?
The one we reviewed on the show, right?
Yeah.
Early on, I think. And I think we all loved that one, and Princess Mononoke, and I mean, there's just so many great ones. So, and then some I've seen that I'm lukewarm on that I need to give another shot. So it's going to be interesting. And like you said, Brad, they're going to be out for sale, right, at $20 a piece. But then later in the year, next year, they're coming out as rental, right? They're going to be released on streaming somewhere, I think.
Yeah, I didn't. In the announcement I read, I didn't see anything about rental pricing. I know they are coming to HBO Max next spring, March of 2020.
Right.
But I don't know about rentals being part of the distribution. So if you read that somewhere, that's even more exciting for people.
I thought, I could be wrong, but I thought I saw something that said in May they're going to be available on the part of the HBO Max platform for streaming. So yeah. I saw May, maybe it's March. Yeah.
I saw that. So the G Kids did that deal, sort of separate of this deal here, which is the more general putting them up for streaming. But yeah, I mean, this is something like 20-ish different movies that are available, which you're absolutely right. Getting some of these before was an absolute pain. Like, you could see a few, like you could maybe get this one on like a platform here or there, but it was mostly like tracking them down. And that sucked. And what's great about this too is, so we've got this at the house, we've got this box set of like all of the Miyazaki films, which is wonderful. And we love that we have that physical thing in our possession. But this isn't just Miyazaki films. This is several Ghibli films that are outside of what Miyazaki did as well, which gives people a chance to see a few different sides of these wonderful pieces of art that this wonderful legendary studio has put out. So I am 100% on board with this. There are some of these films that I haven't seen yet. Like I haven't seen Whisper of the Heart. I haven't seen My Neighbors the Yamadas, which is, well, in fact, I don't know what My Neighbors the Yamadas is, which is pretty interesting. Like, I don't even know what the hell that movie is. So I'm excited for this. There's going to be a lot of fun discoveries to be had here, even for Miyazaki fans.
Yeah, and I the one film that I've seen like once, maybe twice, that is destroys me every time I see it is Grave of the Fireflies, and I didn't see it on the list, so I don't know if there's some weird rights thing going on with some of these films, but it's definitely not on the list that I saw. Maybe it was just left off for another reason, or it's going to be added later. I know that what was the one we saw? The most recent one we saw about the airplane inventor guy.
The Wind Rises.
The Wind
Yes.
Rises. That's not on the list either, but they said that was going to come out later. So
Right.
there may be some other rights things going on in the background that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, I saw that one listed. Like at least the link that we were
Yeah.
looking at has it for late 2020.
Right.
So
Right.
staggered.
I imagine it's kind of like, I hate to bring everything back to Disney Plus, but it's kind of like Disney Plus in the sense that like a lot of their stuff, they have like streaming agreements with other companies and stuff right now. So certain things, even though they're made by Disney, like can't be on Disney Plus because of those agreements. So, I wonder if, like with The Wind Rises or Grave of the Fireflies, maybe some of those things are keeping them from immediately being available.
Have you guys seen Pompoko? It's one of the ones that's on the list. It's by Isao Takahata. He's the guy that did Grave of the Fireflies, and he's got a couple of other ones on here. Only Yesterday and Princess Kaguya. But if you haven't seen Pompoko, that is a weird as fuck movie that I strongly recommend you checking out. There are more animated testicles in that movie than I've seen anywhere else in my life. So put Pompoko at the top of your list if you just want to see some literally magical ball sacks.
There you go.
If you got a scrotum fetish, that's the movie for you. And there's no judgment in that statement. Just it is what it is. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead
Pompoko.
and move on to our movie discussion here in just a moment. But we have a very special guest in the live chat, guys. Adrian Charlie from Green Screen of Death podcast is with us. Hey, Adrian. He says, hi, cuties. Can't stay long. Just tuning in for a bit before I have to go. Heart symbol. Adrian, you can't see it, but we're making a heart symbol back at you. We love you and Bill. We miss you guys. And hope that you are doing well.
We're fluttering our eyelashes, and Jim's just blushing, and Brad's peeking up over the monitor. We're absolutely smitten that you've come to join us tonight, Adrian, even if it's just in passing.
And for those of you who are into the Twitch streaming thing, catch Adrian on the Crow Show.
Yeah,
on his Twitch feed. Some pretty cool stuff. I've clicked in a couple times, and I still can't figure out the Twitch thing. So. But I have been able to watch some of his game streaming stuff, which is pretty cool.
Always a good time on the Crow Show. We love it. All right, Jim, Will, all of you out there in listener land, be you live or digitally tape delayed, are you ready for our movie discussion?
Yeah, let's get those knives out.
Knives out.
All right. We're going to be talking about Knives Out, the new whodunit from director Rian Johnson. Spoiler free for probably the first 15 minutes or so. Then we'll give you fair warning before we open spoilers up for another 15 minutes or so. And then we'll have plugs at the end of the episode. If you are listening on digital tape delay, either through Apple Music, Spotify, however you like to access podcasts, feel free to use the time index in the show notes to skip around as needed or wanted. If you are listening live, well, pay attention to the warnings that we give. We'll let you know when to step away for 15 minutes and come back. Will also put some warnings for you in the chat that'll help you out as well. So, Will, thanks for doing that. All of that said, here we go. Our discussion of Knives Out. All right, Kevin Ryan. Hey, Kevin, good to see you. Welcome. Says, hey guys, sorry I'm late. Lost track of time. Glad I didn't miss any of the Knives Out discussion, though. Indeed, Kevin, you are just in time. Welcome. Glad to see you as well. Will, if you wouldn't mind, give us just a brief setup of Knives Out. And is this worth seeing in theaters, waiting for rental, or skipping entirely? Spoiler free, of course. What do you think?
All right, Knives Out. This is a whodunit detective story. Think along the lines of like an Agatha Christie, a Poirot type story. And the premise is you've got this renowned crime novelist, this Harlan Thrombey, and he is found dead in his mansion just after his 85th birthday. So it's up to the debonair Southern detective Benoit Blanc to figure out what exactly happened here, sorting through this tapestry of lies and deceit and clues and mystery, all at the both at the behest and also with them as the obstacle, this dysfunctional family of Harlans. You've got a killer cast of actors here. Daniel Craig's playing Benoit Blanc. Chris Evans is in this. Jamie Lee Curtis, Michael Shannon, Don Johnson. You got some scenery to chew up. You get Toni Collette in there as well. You want Christopher Plummer? Yeah, we got Christopher Plummer. You want the kid who's the lead in It? Yeah, get Jaden Martell in there as well. This movie's got everybody. And I absolutely love this movie. I think that this is one of the most fun experiences I've had at the theaters this year, because this is a story that understands what it takes to be a fun, interesting, gripping, whodunit type thing. And I will say that I'm in some ways sort of an easy lay for something like this, because we talk about like a lot of the things that we love here, like, you know, Brad and I have similar love of like certain science fiction type things, but when it comes to like novel time, I'm not the one who's like, I haven't read a lot of the extended universe Star Wars stuff, because just sci-fi fantasy isn't where I pick up the books. I pick up mystery, detective, like thriller type things. And so I'm already sort of an easy lay for some of this. And I will say that, you know, that bias is probably on display as we talk about it. I like detective stories, but I especially like this one because it feels like it is both very adherent to the tenets that make a really good whodunit, while also finding some ways to both modernize and subvert some of those elements in a way that I think makes it very original and very integral within the genre. And I love that. And I also love that this is, you know, box office isn't a end all be all of anything, but I believe that this is one of the 3 original properties that has done the best at the box office this year. Between this, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I forgot there's one more. But anyway, there's only 3 that aren't a sequel or a franchise or something like that that have done well at the box office. But this detective story is resonating with people enough to get them out of the theater. So yeah, I recommend you go see this. It's one of my favorite movies of the year. I don't know where it's going to fall top 10. Doesn't matter. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think you should go check it out at the theater. I think we always talk about, reboot and franchise fatigue. And we've got this really great original story. Go support it. Yeah, I'm all in on Knives Out.
All right. Big recommend from Will. Jim, how about for you? Did it resonate on your end?
It resonated on certain levels, and kudos to Rian Johnson for being the writer and director in this. I know that he's dabbled in kind of the crime area before in his release Brick, which kind of put him on the scene. Maybe a little bit less in something like Looper. But
Brothers Bloom, yeah.
Brothers Bloom. We have to remember he directed probably the best episode of Breaking Bad, Ozymandias, right? So he's dealt kind of in the crime thing before, and that obviously is seems like one of his passions. And it comes out in this movie. I think this movie is very well done for a mystery. I think sometimes it maybe is a little too slick in some places. I think there's a little bit too much going on in kind of the mystery. I did like, I really got into some of the characters here. I want to give some credit to the characters that kind of stood out for me, and the performances that stood out for me. I thought Ana de Amas as Marta Cabrera, she's kind of the caretaker for Harlan Thrombey. I thought to me, she was kind of the standout. Right? She's a fresh face, a sort of fresh face, in terms of kind of putting her in with this group of seasoned all stars, right? And I thought she more than held her own in that arena with all these big names. It was great to see Don Johnson again, kind of come to life in this movie because you just get the sense that he was enjoying doing what he was doing in this movie. And I've always liked Don Johnson, but I think he kind of gets pigeonholed into certain roles. And here, I think is probably one of his better roles. And then, like you said, other people are chewing up scenery. Tony Collette, Christopher Plummer. It's always great to see him in roles, and I'm surprised. This is I don't know if it might be a minor spoiler, so I'll wait on it. But it was great to see him in the movie and feature so prominently in the movie. I'll just say that. I actually wasn't in as love with like Daniel Craig, and I know he was hamming it up as Benoit Blanc. I don't know I don't know if it was the tone of the character or just the weird Southern accent that didn't really come across quite right to me. I'm not saying it's a bad performance. I think he certainly fills the role, and but he probably gets the majority, I would say, of the lines here in the movie, of the screen time, right? Because he's kind of at the center. He's a detective, a private detective at the center of this mystery. So yeah, I think this is a recommend for me. I've already recommended it to my ex-wife, actually. She's a big lover of things like Murder, She Wrote, and whodunits like that. And I told her, I said, I think you'd like this movie, and you should probably go see it. So yes, I would recommend it to people. I think it's a really good movie. I think it's well done. I think there's some fun performances in here. So yeah, I'm on the side of recommending it, although maybe not as quite as high as you will.
All right, 2 recommends. Jim, you mentioned the accent. This is like the second recent-ish film where Daniel Craig is like trying to ham it up, right? I don't know if he's trying to like erase the
What was the last
taste
one?
of Bond, but Logan Lucky. Remember, he played a prisoner. And
Oh God,
was
Logan
putting
Lucky.
on that
Yeah,
terrible,
yeah.
terrible like. And I hated his accent in this movie. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's fun, and he's doing something different." Like that's great, but I was almost, I don't know. I kind of wanted the character to like at some point like slip into his, non-accented voice and be like a thing where he's putting on airs or
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
Yep.
I thought it was like he was actually faking it. Like he was going to end up. Well,
Yeah,
we'll get into
yeah.
that in spoilers, I guess.
But
Let's not spoil it.
yeah, but so he has that accent throughout, and it made it really, really difficult for me to like take that character seriously whatsoever. And he's really at the center of trying to like unravel this knotted mystery. And whereas I like a good whodunit now and then, I mean, I like Murder She Wrote, I like mystery movies. I think because I couldn't really latch on to the Daniel Craig character, and the accent was a big reason why. I just ended up not caring a lot and not really getting into it so much. And it's weird for me anyway, because comedy, you guys know, is a bizarre place for me. This movie, I feel like, doesn't try to be like a complete comedy. I guess it's kind of a dark comedy or a mystery thriller with comedic undertones. But the comedy stuff just didn't work for me. It fell super flat, and I don't know. I was interested to see how things resolved, but it felt like I was watching a really bad episode of like Perry Mason or Murder, She Wrote with like a Rian Johnson flair, as opposed to like a really good mystery film for me. I think I might feel a little different if this was like a serious film without all of the comedy stuff thrown in, and maybe the main mystery solver wasn't like a total caricature as opposed to a character. But it didn't really work for me. I mean, I was entertained. I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would based on the trailer, so I think that's a positive. But this movie, I mean, I don't know. It's not something that I would recommend people go out and rush and see in theaters. Maybe catch this on streaming or, watch it on TV. Maybe the commercial breaks will let you get the bad taste of the Daniel Craig accent out of your mouth now and then throughout the film. But I don't know. This just didn't work so well for me.
Brad, are you telling me the acting didn't work for you here? The capital A acting
I don't think I'd
of
call
Daniel
it
Craig.
capital A acting by any means, but that's me.
I've
That
got to
is
say
that
that
is my personal opinion. I'm not saying he's a bad actor. A lot of people really, I think, liked that. It just didn't work for me.
I mean, Brad, this is honestly way more positive than I was expecting because I mean, we talked about it before you went and saw a movie. Like, it almost felt like it. I got the vibe that this almost felt like homework going into it, and the fact that like you came out of it with like some positives, I think, speaks to the movie at least exceeding your expectations.
I think that's a good way to put it. It did feel like homework. And we even went to see this movie with friends that we enjoy hanging out with. And I was like completely not looking forward to going at all. But Jim, you mentioned Ana de Armas, who played Marta Cabrera. I thought she was fantastic in this movie. I liked her a lot. I definitely engaged with that character quite a bit and what she was going through. But the movie sort of has this pinion, right, between like her and the family and what's going on. And I felt like the family and the other stuff kind of hurt her a little bit. But final thought for me, it was great to see Chris Evans ham it up as a sleazy asshole after watching him be fucking Captain America for 10 years.
Yes, that was interesting.
It was really nice to see. You both have mentioned Ana de Armas, and she. I haven't seen a ton of things with her because I mean she doesn't have quite as many resume points as some of the others in this movie. But she was in Blade Runner 2049, and that's kind of the first thing that really put her on my map. And so seeing her in this, and I guess knowing that she's in the new James Bond movie, so I think that I mean that connection's there. I'm really excited for. She's one of those actresses now that, based off of this, what she did here, and just her being sort of like the heart and the core, and just like the pulse of this film. The next 2 or 3 movies that she comes out with, I'm gonna like insta buy the tickets because she's sort of in that tier for me. Just like I am that interested in seeing what she does next.
Yeah, one of the comments here was from Sammy, who said he recommended it to his relatives at Thanksgiving. He said it's very entertaining, and that's a good point. This is a movie about a family, a dysfunctional family that I think is a great movie for families to maybe go see. I think somebody could probably find something in this family that to laugh at, and maybe kind of a mirror, although not to quite the level of this family, the murderous level of this family. They might find some things within the family like, oh, this character's just like Uncle so-and-so. And, I think this would be a good movie to see with families.
Yeah, I think if you really identify with whiny rich white people, this really resonates.
Or if you the other side of that is if you absolutely don't resonate with them, because I think what was fun about this movie was that it as much as anything, it sort of took the piss out of the family a bit. Like they have a lot of entitlements, which comes from their station and their money and kind of where they're at. And this film goes out of its way to undercut it. And for me, I know the accent didn't work as well for you. I personally, when we saw this, the Bond announcement come out this week, I was a little disappointed because for me, if they made if Daniel Craig was just put in a box and all he was to do is just every 2 years come out with a new Benoit Blanc movie, that would be my life. Like I would, if I would see those every single one of them because I mean, again, I love that we've got a mystery story sort of on the kind of doing well at the box office. And 2, like I love these like quirky parlor room detective style characters who like your Poirot's or your Poirot's or your Mrs. Maple. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. But like any of the different like Agatha Christie protagonists, I think that he kind of fits in that category. He's in that mold, and I want to see. I personally want to see more Benoit Blanc movies.
Yeah, he was the Poirot of this film, right? Obviously, he was. Yeah, I think he was meant to be a parody of kind of but he didn't really parody it. He was meant to be kind of a caricature of the Poirot character. It's interesting because you have I'm pretty sure Daniel Craig is from the UK, yeah.
Yes,
Like
yeah,
the actor. I think he's from the UK, like
yeah.
either Irish or British, or Welsh, maybe. I don't know. So you've got a guy from the UK with a very French name, but he's like a Southern guy. So you've got a weird combination of things there. I would love to know, like maybe it's on the internet somewhere, what the thought was in terms of like casting him and making his character like a French guy from the South, unless he was Creole, like Cajun Creole. Like that could have been it. You know what I mean? Because Benoit Blanc could have been a Creole name.
I wouldn't be surprised if Logan Lucky came out 2 years ago, and so more than likely about the time they were, and I don't know the shooting cycle. Like there could be some information out there that proves what I'm about to say wrong, but um, the fact that it's been 2 years since Logan Lucky means that more than likely they were going through the casting for this character around the time that movie was coming out, which means that I would put dollars to donuts on the fact that part of the reason for his casting is kind of the reaction that happened at Logan Lucky. I remember a lot of people at the time were just like, "Oh my god, like James Bond's having fun." Like, and there was a lot of buzz about that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that played a
Right.
part.
Yeah. Trying to think of the other things that kind of stood out to me in this movie. Um, this is one where, I mean, if you do get a chance to see it in theaters, I'm recommending to see it. But if you don't get a chance to see it in theaters, I think this one would play fine. Also at home. This is not it's not a cinematic masterpiece, I don't think. There's a lot to look at in the movie. It's more of a character, ensemble piece where you have characters doing stuff on screen all the time. Um, it was great to see Frank Oz show up in this movie.
Yeah.
That was a big surprise. To see him get a little screen time, and I was really pleased at that. And Sammy mentioned something here, and we talked about this a little bit about the rich white assholes, and how the subtext of kind of their privilege versus how they viewed Anna de Armas's character and her family, in terms of how the plot played out. We'll get into in spoilers, but I thought that Sammy says he thought that was very delicious. Although I think it may have been a little too on the nose with some of the joking that was going
Rian
on.
Johnson beat a dead horse? That doesn't happen.
Well, the
Hey, no, you're good.
your bias is showing.
That's okay.
That's
though. That's what we're
okay.
here for.
We talked earlier about this being an
Right.
open forum to share our individual opinions. I did.
Right. But that it was interesting to see how that was woven into this movie. Whether you think it was effective or not, of course, is personal preference. But they did at least make an attempt to undercut this family by showing how much privileged, maybe possibly racist assholes most of them were.
Oh, definitely racist. Like there's even some jokes that point out just how they don't even know like the ethnicity of one of the main characters of the film. Like they're blatantly racist,
Yeah.
and that's a big part of not just the text, like what happens in the film, but also some of the subtext behind their motivations and stuff. And so I think that's I liked how Rian Johnson wove that all the way through the story. So it's a story about this one thing, like it's a mystery, the whodunit and the clues and the red herrings and stuff like that. But it also has this very relevant poignancy to stuff that is like happening right now and is important to some of the conversations we're having right now. And I think both of those elements move in and out of each other, at least for me, fairly seamlessly.
I think it's getting increasingly difficult to talk about this movie without spoiling anything. So, Jim and Will, if you guys are on board, maybe we can go ahead and move into spoilers so we can be a little more free with our tongues.
Yeah, sure.
Let's do it.
All right.
Free with your tongue.
For those who have not yet seen Knives Out by writer-director Rian Johnson, and you value your innocence where it comes to knowledge about the film's plot, this is your opportunity. Go ahead and step away for about 15 minutes and then come on back for our plugs at the end. If you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay via Apple Music, Spotify, whatever your chosen client may be, feel free to skip on ahead to plugs using the handy dandy time index in the show notes. Jim, thank you for lovingly crafting that. I know you haven't done it yet compared to when we record, but you will, and we appreciate you doing so.
Thank you.
Indeed. All right. I tried to give a little extra time for those of you who want to step away or skip ahead. Spoilers for Knives Out are officially fair game. Where do you want to start?
Let's start at the end, right? So we have we're in spoilers. So the one of the things that Brad and I were kind of both on the same page. I think one of the hallmarks of these movies is you're really not supposed to be able to necessarily easily figure out like who the killer is. Like suspicion is placed on almost every single character along the way. At one point in time, you could think, oh, it was her, or oh, it was him, or oh, well, this really didn't happen. I mean, at one point, we thought that Harlan was gonna like be behind the whole thing to kind of expose his money grubbing asshole family for what they were, and that totally could have been a plausible ending of this movie, right? But the movie, I guess, subverted our expectations and reverted to the Chris Evans character being the one who ended up switching some medication and causing, I guess, causing the death of Harlan, or not quite causing the death, but it wasn't really super clear. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. But I guess I think the movie did its job plot wise in terms of doing that, like keeping us guessing until the end, right? And that's one of the things you ask for in a film like this. You don't want people saying, "Oh, I guessed it was that person from the very beginning," and like, no, you didn't. You might have thought it was that person at one time, but at any one time in the movie, it could have been anybody.
And one of the things that especially works here is this film changes the way that it tells its story in such a way that it sort of puts you a little off kilter, because this is a film where we're in spoilers. Very early in the movie, you find out how he died. And then you work backwards to figure out, well, what does that mean? What is the impact of that? What are some new clues that come across it? We find out the whodunit fairly early on in the movie, and then you find out more at that point, and it changes the way that you look at all of the previous scenes. That looking at things out of order is, I think, an important, crucial part of what keeps this story propelling forward. And I do really like the fact that I ended up watching this one twice, and I did it with the second time of like, okay, I'm going to like really watch this one from the perspective of, I'm going to look to see if there's any bumbled clues or if there's anything that like sticks out as clunky on the second go through. And if anything, it even impressed me even further, because this was all like the way everything was laid out was very, very clean, very, very slick in terms of like pulling you kind of along through all of those different things. You got just enough clues at any given time to know what you were supposed to know in the story. Not so much that you could definitively know what was going on, but not so little that you felt like when you got to the last reveal, you were just like, well, I don't know what the fuck just happened. So I really liked, like, I think there's an art to laying out your clues and a whodunit, and I think that he nailed it here.
So, all right, for someone who saw it twice, correct me if I'm wrong. Chris Evans supposedly switched the meds, but then she figured it out and gave him the right medicine?
Sort of, yeah.
And
so
he
what
did end up committing suicide?
Well, no.
He did.
He switched them, and she did get distracted and gave him, from her perspective, the wrong one. The bottle, had the other label. So both she and the Christopher Plummer character thought he'd been given, the deadly dose of
Yes.
morphine, not knowing that Chris Evans had switched them. So if she hadn't been distracted playing the game and talking to him, she would have killed him.
Yeah.
But she didn't.
She did not.
She did not kill him because
The
when
medicine did kill him.
she gave him the wrong labeled medicine, but the correct liquid, because she's just used to looking at the liquid. And so because she then looked at the label afterwards and was like, oh shit, like, I think you're going to die. That's when he killed himself. So the crime that he ultimately, like the thing that they got Chris Evans for at the end wasn't like, had nothing to do with Thrombly. Like there's probably some like obstruction or attempted murder stuff that goes in that, but the crime they got him for was murdering the housekeeper, like that element, like that, and they got that on tape because the one detective was recording it. So that's what he went to jail for, was the murder that he committed to try to force Marta to sort of come clean about the crime that she supposedly committed to invalidate the will.
So Daniel Craig did not know until the end that he did commit suicide, right? When he had said early on, like, there was, this was definitely foul play. The foul play that he was referring to was just something that he suspected, or it was just kind of weird because he said that before Chris Evans had killed anybody.
Well, what he had suspected was like that. So the one piece of evidence that he had that was like sticking out like in his craw so much was the fact that somebody hired him to look into it from the family anonymously. So he came into this already suspicious, and that was Chris Evans was the one that hired him. That was Chris Evans's intention in hiring him, to get the suspicions going, to figure out the will stuff, to get Marta's portion of it invalidated, like all of that. So what ended up happening is, so at the beginning of this, Benoit Blanc is sort of playing into like Chris Evans's plan, and it's not until he spends more time with good-hearted Marta and sees that tox report there at the end that he realizes kind of like what's happened and sort of slams the brakes to try to reverse it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a little point of confusion for me, and it was very twisty in terms of like, the whole movie they're really trying to solve what appears to be the murder of Harlan, and then it kind of takes a left turn, and it's not really investigating that anymore. It's totally something else.
Hamstracked in the chat says that he reminds us that Benoit Blanc mentioned he noticed the drop of blood on Marta's shoe early on.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
And I wonder, even on kind of like rewatch, like how much of that was he was actively suspecting Marta, and how much of it was him trying to figure his way through all of this. Benoit Blanc is really interesting as a detective because he straddles the line for me between, I'm a very clever, perceptive guy who's able to piece things together, but sometimes those types of detectives are written as overly cute in terms of their ability to pull things off. I think like Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock Holmes was sort of like that a little bit. Like his ability to deduct things was almost like magic sometimes. I think that this detective here like straddled an interesting line that I liked, and smart enough to figure out the clues, not so smart to make it boring.
He's a Benoit baller.
Brad, that's a really, really good pun. I hate you a little bit for it, but also I love you a lot for it.
Oh. I'm trying to think of like some of the more comedic parts for me. I think we're just really involving the family, like the way they kind of like barbed at each other all the time, like even before things got really crazy. Especially Michael Shannon, of course, Chris Evans, and who was tearing into the kid. The masturbator. What were they calling him? I forget what.
The masturbating Nazi child.
The Nazi masturbator. Yeah, that was. I thought that was pretty funny. I wish they had leaned into that a little bit more. about, because that character, I think, probably would have been a little bit more interesting, but he didn't really have much screen time. Who was the kid? I forget what his.
Jaden Martell.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he's plays Bill in the It movies.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's Bill from It. That's right. Yeah.
My biggest laugh was first of all, the entire will reading scene was just a laugh riot for me. The way everyone interacted with each other, the way everyone had their expectations sort of forward, and then the way they were pulled out from beneath them, and then the just chaos that ensues afterwards. There's this one shot where Marta sort of like steps away for a second, and everyone's just like following her, but they're coming up different ways. Like Jamie Lee Curtis is like, "You bitch," like yelling at her, and then Toni Collette comes, "Hey, just forget about all of them. Just like, hey, I just want to make sure you're okay." But it's very obviously like a ploy to like sort of get on her side. Everyone came at her from all these different angles, Knives Out, trying to carve her up, as the movie references. And I thought that was so interesting because you mentioned this was a character study. Well, we got to see everyone's characters, not just in their like solo introductions and stuff like that, but when that bombshell happens, you got to see everyone's sort of like true colors come out as they all sort of like tried to figure out their angle in the thing. And that was a lot of fun to watch.
Oh, and don't forget all the vomit humor. That was fun too.
Lots of vomit humor.
The vomit humor.
Michael Shannon screaming about "eat your fucking cookies" to Chris Evans was also a delight for me.
I thought the vomit thing was kind of weird, but like I liked it as a plot device because it gave a characteristic to that character that, like, I don't know, it felt weirdly defining in a way. Like she obviously could not get away with telling lies, right? So from a trying to figure out the movie, trying to figure out the plot and the mystery, I thought it worked pretty well. That she had this gross little tell, if you would, about her.
Especially since we have to follow her for so much of this movie, and a lot of where this movie works is whether or not that we can sort of trust that her telling of things is honest. Because if she was an unreliable narrator, once kind of that first reveal happens early on, then it becomes like a thing where you not only have to question the motives of everyone around, but you have to question everything that you've seen so far. And with that particular tick in place, it takes that off of the board. And so you have this character that you can kind of more straightforwardly follow through while you unravel kind of the second wave of the mystery.
See, for me, I think that's part of what makes it uninteresting. Is I think about other whodunit movies I've seen, or episodes of Law and Order, whatever, where like you don't definitively necessarily know that the main character didn't do it, right? Like you're relying on the mechanism of this character being questioned and what you see and what comes out. So for her to like throw up anytime she tries to tell a lie, as much as I liked the performance, I thought it made the Marta character a lot less interesting because I'm like, well, obviously she's the wholesome good girl. Like she can't tell a lie. So that didn't quite work for me, but
yeah.
And I think the fact that it was so different than kind of those traditional mystery tropes is what made it kind of work for me, because this subverted sort of two things. Like one, you had more of an honest core character through the middle of it, and two, you got your how the death happened really early on, as opposed to normally that wouldn't even happen until way later in a lot of these whodunit type things. And so those two changes alone made this sort of something where it still fit within the tapestry of whodunit, but it made it sort of an original representative of that thing. And so that's why it worked a little more for me.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, and I think in these movies, like there's a lot of characters here, and there's a lot of characters involved in, or that could be involved in the central mystery, right? So if every single one of them is an unreliable narrator, as well as the writer and the director, maybe also in your mind being an unreliable narrator, then you're lost. The movie could do anything at the end, and it'd be like, oh, okay, well, they solved the mystery, and it wouldn't be that interesting to me. Like if they're all, I don't know, it just, I think you have to have some boundaries, and I think that was a hard boundary of her not being able to tell a lie was one hard foundation you could go off of to try to, because I don't know, maybe not everybody's like me, but when I get into these movies, I'm in the movie and I'm trying to figure out what really could have happened. And if everything I see and hear is, could be just made up, then it doesn't have it doesn't hold any substance for me. It doesn't hold any mystery. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Well, it does, and I think what is especially interesting, not just about this film, but about whodunits in general, and I'm seeing it in the way that we're having this conversation. We're talking about this movie in a sort of different way than we talk about a lot of movies, because a lot of times when we're talking about film, we are just talking about the characters or the cinematography or the narrative itself. And yeah, we've talked about all of those things here. But I think with a mystery story where the the whole, like, the reason you get on board with it is sort of like unraveling the clues and finding out the solution to it. I think there's an interesting conversation to be had about how we watch these things and how we absorb these things. And as you were talking about through your process, Jim, about I get in there and I'm looking for the clues and I need the thing to latch onto and all of that, it made me think, like, that is not a way that we necessarily talk about other stories, and it makes this genre so interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, who knows? Maybe we'll get more whodunits from other directors, and I mean, we don't really get a lot of them. Although I just seen not really a whodunit in terms of like murder mysteries, but other movies I've seen have had central mysteries, and I love that kind of story, like The Good Liar, for instance, right, which I talked about last week as my plugs. But yeah,
Nice.
well, I'm always down for a mystery.
are pretty long in the tooth at this point, and we've still got plugs to go, so we should probably go ahead and make that transition as we look to wrap up here. But any final thoughts before we do?
I'm trying to figure things out. I just Michael Shannon. We didn't talk much about him. I kind of wish his character had a little. I know he was in it a bit. I just wish they had given his character a little bit more comedy to do. I think that might have been interesting to see. He played a fairly stoic character compared to the rest of them in this movie. So, yeah. I like anything that he's in, actually.
Yeah, and I'm just going to kind of echo the support original films between, Us was the other one. Us, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Knives Out have been the three highest grossing original properties to come out this year in a landscape of Frozen 2s and Avengers this and Spider-Man that and all of those types of things. I love that we've got these stories that exist in their own little universes by themselves. So support that, because as Disney owns more and more things, we're probably going to get less of that. So support what we can where we can.
And for me, Jim, you mentioned Don Johnson earlier, leaving this movie. As much as I didn't like it, I really, really liked seeing Don Johnson pop up again as well. And in fact, I made a little prayer to the Hollywood gods to please have more Don Johnson pop up in things. And then randomly last night, Jim's like, let's start watching Watchmen. And I'm like, okay. 2 minutes in, who's a character? Don Johnson. So we're just starting that series. Obviously, we have a lot of episodes to go, but it was a treat seeing him pop up in that as well. So maybe we're going to get a Don Johnson renaissance. That would be magnificent. I would love that. But all right, we're going to make the transition. Here we go. Plug time. I just want to throw a plug out real quick for something that is starting this coming Sunday. The CW has been killing it with their DC superhero shows. Been a longtime fan of Arrow and The Flash. Superbird? Oh my God. Supergirl. Has been kind of uneven for me, but I mean, I like it. Batwoman has been fantastic. Black Lightning has been great. They are doing the biggest, hugest like comic book TV show crossover ever. It's going to be 5 episodes. It starts this Sunday with Supergirl and Batwoman. Then it continues with Flash. And then the last 2 episodes are going to be in January after the holiday break, which kind of irritates me. But a lot is going to happen. So many guest stars. Brandon Routh, who has been, he's well known for playing Superman in Superman Returns. He's actually been on 2 of the CW shows, Arrow and Legends of Tomorrow, playing Ray Palmer, the Atom. He's actually going to be playing the Superman Returns Superman in Crisis. So the character's gone through a lot. He's now the Kingdom Come Superman, if anybody's familiar with that at all. They've also got Tom Welling back playing Clark Kent from Smallville, which I am just hugely excited about. John Wesley Shipp, who's been on The Flash, used to play The Flash himself back in the 90s, and he's reprising that character, suit and all, during Crisis on Infinite Earths. So it's a 5-episode thing kicking off Sunday. Check your local listings and showtimes, but I'm pumped. It's going to be amazing.
Are you going to be buried in it? When did you say it's starting up?
Sunday evening. First 2 episodes, and then we got Tuesday night for The Flash.
All right. Nice. You'll be busy next week.
I will. Maybe you can watch it with me, Jim. Thousands and thousands of people are going to be talking about it. It is the TV superhero event of the last 5 years. So
I'll give it a shot. You know me. I'm game for anything.
All right. Excellent. Moving on down the line for plugs. Will, what have you got this week?
Yeah, so the thing that I'd like to plug is a movie that you'll be able to, anyone listening to this right now will be able to watch very, 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 very soon. It's a movie called Marriage Story. I got a chance to watch this over the weekend, and it's coming out on Netflix, I believe this coming Friday, so honestly, by the time that some of you are listening to this, it may already be on there. But it's a movie by Noah Baumbach. He did The Squid and the Whale and Frances Ha and Mistress America. And the Meyerowitz stories, which I know we were pretty big on when we talked about it last year. So Marriage Story it's Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver are a young couple who are going through a divorce. And it is a heartwarming and heartbreaking and emotionally raw story. And I will say that it's easily the best performance I've ever seen by Adam Driver. It's one of the 2 best performances I've probably seen by Scarlett Johansson, the other one also being this year. It absolutely wrecked me. And I strongly recommend you watch it. Laura Dern is in this as well. And I know we're all fans of Laura Dern here. She gets to deliver just a fucking killer ballsy ass monologue in this one as well. So it's called Marriage Story. It's coming out soon. It's not a date night movie, but it's just absolutely stellar performances all around. People at the best of their game, and I can't recommend it any more highly.
And that's, yeah. So, Will, it's basically a couples movie. Is that what you're saying? Couples Friday night. Would that be a dangerous thing, or would that be?
Absolutely. I mean, I guess it depends on the couple, but no. I mean, this is like I was saying, this is not a date movie. It's this is a movie about. It's very real in terms of the emotions of going through a divorce and that type of breakup, and the promises that you make to the other person, and the way that those things escalate, and the way things get nasty in weird ways, but still the humanizing elements. It's very, very uncomfortably real, but it's also so beautifully real as well. I hope that no one ever has to go through what this couple has gone through, but anyone who has, I think you're going to be able to find some absolute truisms, maybe not necessarily in the actual facts, oh, this is exactly what happened to me, but the core of what they're feeling, you'll immediately recognize.
All right.
I'm interested in seeing it just for at least for the performances alone. So as soon as we get a chance, I'd like to see it.
There you go. All right, Jim, what's on your radar this week for plugs?
So, just for the heck of it, and I'm not yet really in the Christmas holiday spirit yet, but I wanted to turn on a classic holiday movie that I actually never sat down and watched, even though similar to A Star Is Born, I think there's 4 versions of this movie that have come out since it was originally came out. But I went all the way back to 1947 to watch Miracle on 34th Street. I don't know if anybody's seen this one. It's on the Disney Channel right now. I mean, Disney Plus. It's Disney Plus, right? If you've got Disney Plus, um, it's this is worth watching. It's 1947. It's early, but I was shocked at how well written this movie was. Sometimes these older movies can be super, super, and you expect this one to be somewhat corny, but and it is in spots. But I think a lot of the earnestness and um, heartfelt emotions are still there, and the good writing that allowed this thing to exist for what, like 60, 70 years now, going almost on 70 years. The movie's about a nice old man who claims to be Santa Claus. They're talking about institutionalizing him as insane, and a young lawyer decides to defend him by arguing in court that he's really Santa Claus. Um, but that's not the part of this movie I loved. I loved there's a very young Natalie Wood in this movie, like 9 years old or something. She's amazing. You could see, like some kid actors today, you can tell they're just so I don't know, just kind of faking it. And but she comes across really genuine, really good performance by Natalie Wood. Maureen O'Hara is in this one. I would recommend you guys if there's a Christmas movie that you want to see to kind of get you in the Christmas spirit. That's not something maybe you've seen before. Go back and see Miracle on 34th Street from 1947. It's a classic, and there's a reason why it's a classic. So that's my plug this week.
I guess it is sort of tis the season to start thinking about classic Christmas movies, right, guys?
That's right. That's right. This might come up again if we our end of the year show. You never know. It might have worked my way into my list of favorite Christmas movies.
Interesting. Definitely a good pick, Jim, for your plug. I had seen the movie before, but it was a treat watching it again. I'd never realized that was Natalie Wood playing the precocious little girl. So that was kind of like it changed my whole view of Natalie Wood. So good stuff. All right. Well, that wraps us up for plugs this week. Before we go, I do have a couple of announcements. Before we even get to those, though, let's just let people know where they can find and interact with us online. Jim, where can folks reach out to you?
Find me on my Twitter account. That's where I talk and tweet a lot about movies, mostly. That's at JJP Out West. All one word, my initials, JJP Out West. And also find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico.
All right. And Will, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter at Whatever Cove. If you message me there, just don't use the word Scorsese or Marvel because I might have them muted right now.
Block it.
You can find me on Facebook. Look for William Lindis. And you can find me on letterboxd.com, a site for tracking and listing and reviewing films. Just look for William Lindis and you'll see me on there as well.
All right. Excellent. And you can find me on Facebook. Just search for Brad Harris. I'm not the one with the Confederate flag behind him. I'm the one that probably has Bear, Chub, Chaser, etc. friends in common with you. Feel free.
Or a He-Man.
I do have a He-Man related picture. That could be me. In any event, where was I going with that?
Sorry.
That's okay. Like Will said, shoot me a message first so I know you're not a very clever bot. You can also find me on Twitter at iBradPro. I mentioned a couple of just housekeeping items. We wanted to put a couple things on your radar. Next week, we are going to be celebrating the holiday season with a special review of Home Alone. We're going to be bringing back a classic, but I say it's a special review because we're going to do something that we did last year with the movie Elf, and that is, this is going to be our second ever Grizz Tracks review of the film. So Jim, Will, and myself are going to start the movie at the same time. You're more than welcome to start the movie with us. It is available to stream on Disney Plus. I'm not sure if that's how we'll access it. We'll figure that out. But you can watch the movie with us, and we'll be doing commentary as we watch the film. And if you don't happen to catch us live, the cool thing is when you listen to the episode later on, we'll do a nice little like 1, 2, 3, go. And that's when you'll know when to start the movie. It should be fun. We hope you'll join us for that. Also, our 7th anniversary is coming up here in just a couple of weeks, guys. And it kind of falls in between episodes. So we might be combining that with our review of The Rise of Skywalker. We'll figure that out too.
Mm-hmm. I know that we've celebrated with Star Wars in the past. I remember photoshopping a cake into the photo from Rogue One. So I know that Star Wars has been sort of a part of us for a bit, just like Hobbit and a few other franchises have. So yeah, I mean, it's fitting that we always seem to get some sort of like big end of year blockbuster around the time that we're celebrating ourselves. So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
And 7 years, damn.
Yeah, I mean, it's 7 years. I know it's crazy to think about that. I'm definitely looking forward to that review too, because I think we might get a lot of, hopefully we'll get a lot of interest, right, in the community, and have some of our friends that joined us on this show join us again, and maybe a few more. So that's going to be good. But don't miss next week when we go and do that Grizz Tracks for Home Alone. You can follow along with the movie at home. You can provide your own kind of Grizz Tracks comments in the chat as we try to talk our way through Home Alone, which is a movie that I've seen bits and pieces of it. It's been so many years since I've probably seen the whole movie that I'm not even remembering if I actually saw the whole movie. So
maybe not.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Just a quick follow-up note on the anniversary episode. We'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to maybe send us a message, whether you've been listening for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, a week, a day, whatever that is. If you enjoy the show and you'd like to maybe share a message with us that we could share on air for that episode, you can send those messages to cast@moviebearspodcast.com. So feel free, shoot us a message, tune in for that episode. We'll let you know when that's coming. Be part of our celebration. We'd love to have you with us. Thanks so much for everybody, as usual. Whether you've been with us in the live chat, we had a lot of folks in here this week. So good to see you all. Not everybody commented. That's okay. If you want to be a lurker, that's fine. We like lurkers. If you listen through digital tape delay, iTunes, Stitcher, whatever that may be, thank you for supporting the show. We appreciate it, and we'll see you all next week for Grizz Tracks. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.